The Trojan Horse War, Part 3, Serpent, Chapter 3. Commander Abby Stockdale stepped out of the staff car and looked around the Armistice compound of the Joint Security Area. It was the first time she had ever been there. She recognized everything around her from seeing it on the news countless times and reading about it in history books. The crater rose almost 800 feet on all sides, dominating the landscape. Where outside the crater on the Republic side, grass and trees were planted after the terraforming process was complete, the inside of the crater remained rocky and lifeless. Obviously, this was for security reasons, so the soldiers in the observation posts at the edge of the crater and the ones in Guard Post Milhako inside the crater would have an unobstructed view of everything. But still, it added to the overall eerie atmosphere of the place. She was accompanied by Admiral Wellesley to the Military Armistice Command meeting that the Republic Command had called for almost a month earlier, and only just today a message had come from the Triton Empire that they would send a delegation to the MAC compound that afternoon. Admiral Wellesley had scrambled to get together a group on short notice, summoning Abby from the S2 intelligence office on the Republic space station Hercules. The Hercules was the most forward-deployed Republic space station in that part of the solar system. There were 3 other similar stations that orbited the Sun at the inner edge of the asteroid belt that made up the DMZ. Abby's normal job was overseeing the collection and analysis of intelligence on the Tritons that the Republic gathers in that quarter of the DMZ and the Triton space beyond. This ranged from infrared reconnaissance command center, deep space radar collection, and even observations of foot patrols on the asteroids of the DMZ. Abby had put together a report for Admiral Wellesley before when he went to meetings at the MAC, but this was the first time she'd ever been asked to bring the material in person. Abby readjusted the satchel under her arm that held the telemetry sent by the team that had run into a Triton patrol 3 weeks ago. Abby knew that to get the data on the hidden Triton facility that was sent that day, that whoever sent it had to be on the other side of the military demarcation line, effectively placing that soldier in Triton territory. So she already knew that one of the big sources of contention at this meeting would be which was a bigger violation of the armistice: a secret fighter launch facility inside the DMZ but still on the right side of the MDL, or a single soldier on the wrong side of the MDL. "You're going to do just fine, Abby. Do it just like we rehearsed it," Admiral Wellesley said as he came around the front of the staff car. "Sure, we didn't have time to rehearse it." "Well, then just do it like you would have rehearsed it." A pair of MPs armed with rail pistols came to attention as the Admiral and Abby approached. Wellesley returned the salute, and the MP on the right punched in a code in the kiosk in which he stood. The gate in the quantum fence slid open, and Wellesley and Abby stepped through into the MAC compound. Inside the compound, on the Republic side, the ground was paved. 2 MPs standing just outside of a Republic administration building led Abby and the Admiral up to Conference Row, a line of 6 narrow one-story buildings that straddled the MDL between Triton and Republic territory. The Admiral made small talk with the pair of MPs, asking about their families and how their tours were going. Apparently they had gotten to know one another at previous visits to the JSA. At Conference Row, MPs stood between the buildings at the Republic's end so they could keep an eye on any Triton activity near Conference Row. Another MP stood by the open door of one of the center buildings. Once inside, the Admiral casually walked up to the table in the center of the room and took a seat, while the MPs stood just a few feet behind. Abby fumbled with her satchel, bringing out her flashboard, and linked it to a projector. At one point, when she almost stepped on the other side of the conference table, one of the MPs said sternly, "Ma'am, please stay on this side of the table. The other side is Triton territory." Abby laughed nervously and finished setting up her projector before taking a seat next to the Admiral. The actual border runs between our side and theirs, through the middle of this building, and even bisects this very table, the Admiral said to Abby. She looked out the windows on the other side of the room. She could see MPs standing ready outside. Then a 7-foot Triton soldier, a mass of polished metal with a skull-shaped helmet head, lumbered into view outside the windows to their left. It looked in the window, then turned and faced the nearest military policeman outside. Another Triton soldier appeared outside the other set of windows. They were close, but they were still technically on their side of the border. Like the MPs, they only carried pistols as dictated by the armistice. Then the door on the far end of the conference room opened. 2 more Triton soldiers entered, followed by 2 shorter Tritons wearing dark robes with only their glowing red eyes visible. Abby looked into their faces hidden under their hoods, but she couldn't tell if they were looking back at her because she saw no pupil in their eyes. When she caught a glimpse of dark metal on one of their shadowed faces, she remembered that they must be wearing breath masks because the atmosphere in here was toxic to them. She realized things could have been worse. They could have held this meeting at one of the asteroids that had been conditioned with a Triton atmosphere. Then she'd be the one wearing a breath mask. The 2 robed Tritons took seats on the other side of the table. Their breathing was a low hiss, and when they spoke it sounded like a recording of a regular voice playing backwards and at a very low speed. It took just a moment for the hidden microphones in the room to pick up their voices and transmit the translation to the speakers on Abby's side of the table. We are prepared to receive an explanation for your violation of Triton territory. That is not what we are here for, the Admiral responded. We are here to discuss a much more serious infraction against the armistice between our peoples, the Admiral said. He looked at Abby, who punched enter on her flashboard. A hollow map of the demilitarized zone appeared above the table. G-16 Alpha was in the center, and a small rectangle on its surface represented the joint security area. A red dashed line bisecting the asteroid and the rest of the belt represented the military demarcation line. This map represents the boundaries between our forces as agreed upon by both sides at Mach 2502. It represents the boundary that was violated by one of your race 3 weeks ago, the Triton responded. Admiral Wellesley ignored the Triton and continued. As specified in the original armistice agreement, both sides agreed that any emplacement of a military facility serving as a launch platform for offensive craft inside the demilitarized zone would be a grievous violation of the armistice. If you'd like, my assistant can reread the pertinent text. This time the Triton was silent. Abby wondered if the Admiral actually had the Triton spokesman on the ropes. Very well, Commander, if you would, Wellesley said. Abby punched another couple of keys, and one of the asteroids on the Triton side of the holomap dissolved into a grid representation of its shape. Then the asteroid in question expanded until the rock-penetrating radar image that Lieutenant Nelson had taken and transmitted to Sergeant Baxter right before his capture came into view. As you can see, this is clear graphic evidence of a very aggressive violation of the terms of peace between our 2 sides. There is no way that an offensive facility such as this one fits into the structure of the armistice agreement, Admiral Wellesley said. The image of the asteroid showed blurry Triton personnel moving between fighter craft stacked on 6 expansive flight decks. The fighters looked like bats with delta wings. Abby moved the cursor in the image and focused in on some of the clearer fighter craft, ones that showed the array of missiles and bombs suspended under their wings. As she adjusted the image to show a level of the facility where the long-range bombers were kept, the Triton who had been silent up to this point, made a faint gesture with a black-gloved hand. One of the Triton soldiers touched a few keys on a datapad on its forearm, and an alarming new hollow image appeared. Abby gasped, but the Admiral remained stone-faced. It was an image of Lieutenant Nelson in front of a large room filled with robed Tritons. The sashes and cords that went across their chests revealed them as being fairly high-ranking in Triton society. Their backs were to the viewer, as they were all facing Lieutenant Nelson, who was on a raised platform between two Triton soldiers who themselves were flanked by two black and red Triton flags. Nelson's face was bruised, and his combat jumpsuit was torn and blood-stained in spots. "This is your Lieutenant Robert Nelson of your elite Sierra team after he was captured while attempting to fabricate evidence against the Triton Empire for the purpose of destabilizing relations between our peoples. He is still in the process of confessing. When he is finished, he will be executed. Any coerced confession will be seen as a further act of aggression against the Armistice and the Republic." That soldier accidentally strayed over the military demarcation line, as several entire Triton squads have done so over the last 10 years alone. "We demand immediate access to your prisoner for a medical evaluation," Wellesley exclaimed. After a pause, the Triton speaker responded, "Granted. You may work out the details with my assistant." And with that, the Triton speaker rose and walked out of the conference room, escorted by one of his Triton soldiers.